Something else that has helped me, especially with reading a lot of old books, classic books, that could be classic thinkers, whether you're talking about theology or philosophy, which are kind of the two areas where I'm usually reading, is it's often good not to just start with the primary source itself, depending on what the book is. In other words, it can be very helpful before you just jump into, say, Thomas Aquinas. You want to read Thomas Aquinas. He's super influential. You don't know any of the categories he's working with. You don't know his historical context, and you just go into the Summa and you start reading, and you're like, what am I reading? I don't know what's happening. And you're probably going to give up because you'll be too overwhelmed. And even if you do get through it, you may not have understood anything that you've read because you don't know the categories or context. So it's usually helpful to read an introductory book, something that's like basic overview of the figure that you're going to read about. Now, of course, when you get to figures like this, every introductory book is going to have the biases of the scholar, so don't always take everything you read in that introduction to that person's thought as this is all necessarily correct because you're getting one interpretation. But those things will help you to get the context before you jump into the text themselves. So starting with secondary sources and then jumping into primary sources with the questions that have already been asked and interpretations that you've seen addressed and historical context that you've had put out there really, really does help. And I see this very often where people want to jump into sources because you want to be able to say like, oh, I read Bart's Church Dogmatics, and like, okay, maybe, but did you understand anything in there? I'm not sure anybody does, but that's another question. But if you read Heidegger or you read Hegel, it's not easy to grasp by itself. So you could get through a lot of books, but not have gotten anything out of it. So that's another recommendation that I have.